Hello and welcome to Sharpe Turns. My name is KJ Sharpe. I am the CEO and Development Specialist for Sharpe Turns LLC, Performing Arts and Personal Development, and I'm also the President of the Sharpe Turns World Stage Development Project. Today is the fourth of 15 sessions on Becoming Fire, How to Transform Your Trauma. I would suggest those of you who haven't seen Fire, from the Turning Points videos on my Sharpe Turns channel, that you go to my Sharpe Turns channel and watch Fire so you have a better understanding of what we mean when we say becoming fire. Okay, for everybody, these are our session rules, so to speak. Number one, come to the session with an open mind. You may or may not have the same opinions or the same experiences, or understand or believe in the science or statistics or whatever it is that I talk about. But come with an open mind to get the information. And again, if it's information you can't use, maybe it's information somebody else can use, so share. Number two, faith without works is dead. I really believe that. If you have information and you don't use it, you're going to reach a dead end. So, come with a willingness to work. And number three, make a commitment to make the sharp turns that are necessary to transform your life. Nobody can do that for you. That's something you have to do for yourself. Okay, let's get started. Today's session is called Name It and Frame It. This was a tough session for me to tackle, and maybe for some of you, but we're going to get through this together. When babies are born, the first thing we do is we give them a name, and that name indicates their place in the family, society, and the world. Africans, in some African cultures, they have a naming ceremony, which is they name the child 3 to 7 days after its birth, and that name denotes its destiny and possibly the destiny of the family. My first name means Royal Fortress and from the Royal Glade. My second name means Cascading Pool of Light and Little Lion. And my last name means Gift of Jehovah. Now that's a lot of name to carry, but I've always been very proud of and possessive of my name, even long before I knew what it meant. Scientists give names to diseases, things like cancer, diabetes, coronavirus 19. The name not only identifies the disease, but it helps scientists and physicians to discover things like why, when, where, and how to treat and find possible cures for the disease. So we see that naming things is sometimes very important, and it is imperative for us to face our trauma and give it a name. Until we take a cold hard look at the monster under the bed and deal with the havoc it's causing in our lives, we will never be able to get to or on the path to recovery. I was in an abusive marriage for 7 years, and for a very long time I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't give a name to the gaslighting or the threats, controlling behavior, the isolation, the physical abuse, the psychological manipulation. I thought it was something wrong with me. And when seeking religious counsel, I was told, take care of the kids, make sure they're, all straight, make sure your house is clean, and take care of your husband's needs. As if his behavior was my responsibility. Because I was doing all that, and there was still hell in my house. This was my second marriage. I didn't want to fail. So I kept trying to work things out until one day I went to the library with my children, my 3 youngest children. And as they were being mesmerized by the storyteller, I went into the stacks and, was looking for books and stuff. They say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I know that spirit always shows up and tells us what we need to do or what we need to know, whether we want to know it or not. So I happened upon a brochure. It was about domestic abuse. And I picked it up, and as I read it, tears just clouded my vision. I couldn't see, when you start to cry. So I was afraid someone would see me, so I ran back into the stacks and sat on a low footstool to finish reading the brochure. And the brochure listed several things, several signs of abusive behavior, and my husband exhibited every single one. I was devastated. Like, I was sick to my stomach. I ran to the bathroom because I didn't want anybody to see me cry and ask questions. And so I ran to the bathroom, and I'm just choking on tears. You know how you don't want to be, I didn't want to be heard. So I'm just choking on these tears. And then I panicked. I was like, what if my husband knows that I saw this? What if he knows that I have this information? What if he knows that I know? And then I went to a whole another place of, is this my story? I mean, this can't be us. Like, we are good Christian people. We're heavily involved in the church. My husband at the time was an evangelical minister and served on the praise team. I served on the dance and drama team, the children's church, bookstore, you name it, we were involved in it. We were going to leadership classes. We were in church almost 24/7 with our children. So, I rationalized, this can't be us. They say that a lie can travel the world 7 times before the truth is heard. But in my experience, the truth will keep raising its head, until we acknowledge its presence. And the universe had provided me with a name: domestic abuse, domestic violence. It had uncovered the monster under the bed so we could look each other in the face. But even though I knew its name, I pulled down the covers. I continued to pretend that it wasn't happening to me for real, that there was still something I could do to fix it. If I was good enough, if I could do better, be better, he would change, because the Bible says so. My pastor says so. My deep-seated beliefs at that time about women and their place in society said so. The lies I had told myself said the monster is only a figment of your imagination, and if you would be better, get better, do better, then the monster will disappear. You can fix this. I was in denial, and I continued living my life. And as I continued living my life, the monster was feeding off my fear. I continued living in the honeymoon phases of church, keeping up appearances. The monster got bigger and bigger, kept pushing the boundaries further and further until something in me broke. And I'm still not ready to share that part. But I did what children do, when they're scared. I went to my parents and I told them about the monster under the bed. I shared the minutiae of things that I had been afraid to talk about. My mother immediately got me into counseling. But even though I received counseling, I was still too afraid to leave. But I did my due diligence. I started researching everything about domestic violence, domestic abuse, partner abuse. I wanted to know how this dis-ease in my family would progress. What are the best and worst case scenarios? And I began to develop a safety plan. One evening, my children and I were cleaning the kitchen together. and we were almost finished. So I said, I'm going upstairs. I'm going to take a shower. Y'all can finish up. So I'm in the shower. I had taken a nightgown into the bathroom with me, and I'm in the shower. Seconds later, I hear my little girl, my 5-year-old, running up the steps, screaming. Her father, I run out the bathroom, throw on my thing, run out the bathroom, soaking wet, and her father is chasing her up the steps, beating her with a wooden dowel. And I grab her from him, and he says, they spilled the paint on the floor. Apparently, the 2 youngest had spilled lime green paint on the floor, and they're wiping it up with rags when he came down, and he lost it. So he goes down, and he comes back up again, trying to settle it right. He comes back up again with a rag dripping with paint, and his goal was to smear it in my 8-year-old's face. And I stood between him and my 8-year-old, and he yelled at me, and then he went back downstairs again. And this time all the children are up. My 4-year-old was asleep the whole time, but the rest of the children were now upstairs. And my son, my husband, I guess he cleaned up the mess and came back up again, went in the bedroom. And my son is staring at the bedroom door. My husband had closed the door, and my 15-year-old son is staring at the door, and he's like standing there like an armed guard. I didn't know at the time that my son was trying to get a gun from some young people he knew that were in gangs. And I did know that it was time to do something. The monster had turned over the bed and roared at everyone in the room. So not only knew its name, I knew I was looking at domestic violence, domestic abuse, and I also knew what the monster was capable of. So now it's my responsibility and accountability for my future and the futures of my children. That was the new burden that was on my shoulders. So I knew I had to make a way of escape for us all. And leaving was the most loving thing I could do for myself, my children, and my husband. I contacted the local domestic abuse project, hired a lawyer, and continued to work on my safety plan. It took a year of working on that plan, and something that happened with my oldest daughter, a social worker told me that if I did not remove all of my children from that environment, they would come and take them. And so I implemented my safety plan. I was nothing if not strategic. I was putting stuff away in storage, clothes and stuff the kids needed, and putting their old clothes up on hangers so he wouldn't know that, I was packing for them, for myself. I was putting away documents that I would need, birth certificates, dental records, medical records, things like that. And then on a pretty summer day, a couple of my friends helped me to get my children and myself on a Greyhound bus, and we went 400 miles away to be safe. And people think that once you leave, that's the end of the story. No, that's just the beginning. My children and I had to navigate homelessness and economic hardship and even child predators. I had to strengthen whatever remained of my psychological things, like second guessing myself. When you're being gaslighted every day, over time you begin to second guess yourself about everything. And so I had to deal with that and recover from that. I had to learn that my ideas and decisions were valid and they were right for me. I had to forgive myself for choices I made before, during, and after my marriage. Saying yes when the Spirit counseled me to say no. Saying yes when I didn't, when I really wanted to say no. Not saying anything. Being passive about my life. I had to forgive myself for knowing better and not doing better, for living afraid in order to please spiritual leaders who ultimately prostituted my gifts, and without concern for me and my family. And I had to frame all of this. I had to see my past as a complicated tapestry with dark and light and color and white spaces. I had to see all of that intertwined on the broad canvas that was my life. And while I was framing all of this, I had to remember my name. I had to talk to myself, constantly reminding myself that I am from the royal fortress and from the royal glade. I am that cascading pool of light. I am a little lion. I am the gift of Jehovah. And as I recovered myself, I had to frame all that I had experienced in the light of that name. Naming and framing your trauma, that's been the most difficult work of my life. Naming your trauma helps you to become more aware of what it is you're dealing with, the resources you need to survive, the work you need to do to recover yourself, and the knowledge and wisdom needed to frame what happened to you in the context of your life. If we can name and frame the things that hurt us, that make us feel less than, afraid, angry, heartbroken, sad, we can count ourselves among the overcomers, the conquerors, the champions, the heroes in our own story. We can become fire and then light the way for all of those still in the dark. My name is KJ Sharpe. I'm the CEO and Development Specialist for Sharpe Turns LLC, Performing Arts and Personal Development. Thank you for tuning in today. And remember to make the sharp turns necessary to transform your life. You're the only one who can do that. Have a great day.